Welcome back, everybody. It must be Friday. It must be 11 a.m. Eastern because this is the REI Rocks Review. I'm here today with Angel and Jason as usual. Angel, how you doing?
I am doing all right, despite the fact that our AC is on the fritz, and we're trying to make it work with tons of fans.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not like we're without our own struggles, our own issues to keep going, but we still do it. Jason, how about you? How's it going?
I'm doing pretty well, yeah, and yeah, as Angel said, we're without an AC today. But hey, it's only going to hit 103 instead of the 115. So
It's only 85 right now.
Exactly. What a great deal. Yeah, and of course it's summer. Right, exactly. It's summer, so your house is infested with kids, just like mine, and so that it's not exactly conducive for live streaming, but rain or shine, here we are, right? So, anyway, I can start sharing my screen on what we're doing. Angel, do you want to talk about the VIP site and basically all this content that we review here each week?
Absolutely, I can. And along with, well, let me go ahead and start off. So we've got our subscription, we've got our VIP subscription, and we are making some changes to it. We're going to be categorizing it and making it a little easier to follow and get to all the stuff you want to get to. And with that also comes a coordination of content, and we really get to see how much we have. And the other problem with that is the people that store our stuff, they get to see how much stuff we have too. So it goes up. The cost of the subscription is going to be about double what it has been, but the ease of getting through it all is going to be immense. So we are super excited with some of the upgrades that are coming with the VIP subscription, and we'll be really excited to share them with you as soon as we're done with them.
Absolutely. And if you like the idea of supporting us, this is a great, inexpensive way to do it. It allows us to make these different changes, make it better overall. And now, I don't know how frequently you in the audience, watch this review. Jason Williams, he seems like a pretty laid back guy, but I assure you there's way more going on behind those eyeballs and glasses than meets the eye, and it's happening a lot faster. So he and we both watch our content at 2 times speed, and on these reviews, we review this pre-recorded content at 1.5 times speed, and it's a fantastic way to get more time back in your day. But Jason, did you have anything else to add before we get started with this presentation on operations?
No, I did want to follow up with Angel saying that as our prices or our costs are going up, we're going to be increasing prices. So if you hop in now, you will be grandfathered in. But if you hop in after our prices go up, you will be subject to that new price hike. So, and we're not talking outrageous amount. It's just a little bit, but it could be significant or not. So it's up to you.
Yeah, sure. Lots of people. I put out a fairly popular piece of content a week ago on how some of these coaching programs, they're just not living up to what they're saying they're giving, and it's really disappointing because we end up hearing from these subscribers, these VIP members. You can use the QR code or the link at the bottom of the screen here to access all this, but they're saying people are paying 5 figures and they're getting less actionable info out of that 5 figures. It's pretty crazy stuff. But let's get
started. They're getting more out of our $17 subscription than they are out of that coaching program. So
exactly.
I've heard that numerous times.
Right, exactly. All right, so let's get started. 1.5 times speed. Let's go.
Hi guys, this is Angel with the Academy of Business Real Estate Investing Rocks, and my friend Chander Mishra is here today, and he's going to be talking to us about operations. So whether that's operations on the business side, operations for the property, just kind of going over all of it. And so I'm going to be coming up with questions that I think are going to fit, and hopefully they're going to benefit you. If you have any other questions, we always have the live side, and there is that live Q&A. So Chander, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing, and then we can go into some conversation and questions.
Wonderful. Hey, Angel, thanks. I know we've been trying to schedule this, and your schedule has been tight, including ours. So after all the trips across the United States, from Denver to here, we are here finally. So I'm Dr. Mishra. I'm an anesthesiologist. I know a sponsor syndicator has been doing this since 2016. Mostly limited to multifamily, currently focusing on Dallas-Fort Worth market. I live locally in Colleyville, married for about 25 years to my wife, Eva, and got 2 kids, 14 and 16-year-old, 2 boys, both in high school. So in the whole family, I would call it, is very excited about multifamily work, and we all kind of go together and learn and grow. So that's the short. On multifamily side, over 15 syndications, 4 of the deals which I was part of got sold last year. We sold 1 this year, and we'll sell probably 2 or 3 more year. This year we acquired 7 properties last year, and we continue to acquire more. So over 200 million of assets under management, and we continue to grow.
So I've always heard that the first sweet spot is 100 million.
Yes.
Is there a second sweet spot at 200?
Every spot is a sweet spot.
Okay.
So every spot is a sweet spot, because what you're doing is you are learning, you're growing, you are adding assets, and that makes you kind of grow faster, and you develop contacts. You get confidence in yourself, trust in yourself, and people start trusting you at the same time. So all of this is happening at one time. Your contacts mature, your public image, and everything else is kind of working at the same time. So yes, I would say you get a little bit of a tipping point at a certain part of this journey.
All right, awesome. So if I'm going to say that operations really starts when you're choosing your team, because there's a lot of things that have to be taken into consideration, and there's things that we learned in the last 6 months about putting together a team that you just don't know until you're doing it.
Yes, very right.
What kind of tips do you have on that part when you're first starting out?
When you're first starting out, know that there will always be things which you do not know and which you have not accounted for. And I would say that never ever kind of like feel shy for asking for help. So if you're stuck anywhere, always ask for help. If you are in a situation, it's kind of like someone has already been in it before and someone has already done it. So I think the beauty of this multifamily universe is that any of us are very open and available. And it doesn't matter if we own 2,000 doors, 10,000 doors. If we have time and one of our colleagues comes in and asks, that camaraderie is there in this whole universe to help each other out and point them in the right direction. Would you agree, Angel?
No, I would absolutely agree. And I would even say, like, you're going to come across people that tell you not to speak about your problems that y'all are having. I know we did. And it was like, oh, you can't tell people that this is what we're going through. And I didn't tell everybody. I told a few people because I didn't know what to do. And I knew there were people out there that
I think that's a great place to pause it, because I know, Angel, you frequently mentioned this about the summit content, is that it gives people who are reviewing this, it gives them a chance to learn as you were learning. So at this time here, I believe you already had Thousand Mary, but you didn't have Brigadoon yet, if I have my timing right.
I think that's correct. And the reason why I put it out here, and I put it out here to a few different people when I'm talking to them, is just to kind of get their feel on it. Like, do you think it's okay to talk about the problems that you're having? Because a lot of operators are not okay with it. They may not come right out and say that, but in what they're doing each and every day, you can see that they're not talking about their problems. They're just dealing with them. And I don't know, at first I was kind of like, okay, well, we're not going to talk about our problems. And then I realized that's not me. I can't deal with things that way. I have to talk about things. And so I just started talking about them. And some people got upset. But at the end of the day, we had a lot of people invest with us because they saw us get a deal across the finish line that should have never made it across the finish line based on what we were dealing with. We still got it across the finish line. So we earned like massive street creds. And if I hadn't been talking about those problems, people wouldn't be willing to come to me now and be like, man, this is what's happening. Do you know anybody that's going through this? Or do you know anybody that's gone through this that could maybe help me out? And so that's kind of a neat place to be in, because people seek you out for advice, not because you personally are some massive, amazing operator, but because you are willing to discuss what happened with you. Therefore, people know that other people talk to you and discuss their problems too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned that street cred, and I completely agree with you. The fact is, it's basically one step away from secretive, dishonest behavior. Like if you're trying to say, oh, everything's all fine, it's like anybody who is a limited partner, in other words, a passive investor, someone who receives checks but does not get involved in any of the work. If you're sitting there, putting on airs like everything's running smoothly and perfectly, it's like, well, you've got humans living at your buildings, right? humans have problems, humans cause problems. It's really outrageous to try and pretend that everything's fine. And I think that if you're going to earn trust, which is one of the key parts of this business, you do have to be vulnerable. And I do think that that's it's not a typical superpower, but I definitely think it's one of your superpowers, and I think that attracts people to us as an organization. But that's pretty awesome. So let's continue.
I hope so, because I can't stop talking about it.
Through it, like for us, it was really hard on the lending side, making sure that we checked all the boxes and we were able to get a loan product that worked for us, and that was really scary. And what you see as when you first come into this, there are a whole bunch of zeros. And when you're used to working in like 1,000, 10,000, that's not so overwhelming. When it's 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, those are some really big, very real numbers. And it's scary.
Yeah, you're right.
And so I didn't know what to do, and so I reached out for help. But people shouldn't be afraid to reach out for help. It doesn't make you look weak. Asking for help makes you look strong.
Yes, and it's important to know that, because what may seem like a minor problem or a major problem at that point may not be the same. And you just have to look at it from a second person's perspective, because when we are in a situation, we feel stuck. We feel that we are kind of like at the end of our rope, and because our mind is kind of stuck in that framework, we cannot think beyond it. So yes, you don't want to go out and put a post about it on Facebook, but you do, you do need to have, if you have spent enough time in this industry, you probably have 10 or 15 people on your list who you can call and say, hey, I'm going through this. Do you have any idea, or do you have anything which can help me in this way? And they will tell you, like, and it happens at every level. Like I had a question about hiring people, and Dan gave me a good contact, Dan Hanford. He said, hey, here it is. Just go on this. This is how I hired my people. So it could be as very simple as that. Someone can point you in the right direction, so you don't spend another 30 hours trying to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah, no, I agree. And firsthand, when we were having problems, you were on my phone calls. Hey, Chander, this is what's going on. Can you help me out?
Yes, how we can do it.
Because you just have to suck it up sometimes and don't be embarrassed. I mean, I haven't called a single person that hasn't already been through it.
Yeah, and it worked out.
It did.
Yeah, see,
it was scary.
Yeah, it's scary. It appears scary. I wouldn't say that it's scary, but it appears scary at that moment. And when we like very rightfully you said, when we signed on a loan for $11 or $12 million, especially with some recourse component to it, it's that night I didn't sleep well.
Well, we're not at that level, but I will say it was still, we had a sizable amount of money that went hard day one.
Yeah.
And Jason and I took Tom's crying. I cried, he console me, he cried, I console him. It was not pretty. And that was when we made the list. And it's how in those times you make a list. You start calling out to people that you believe you can trust and that you can count on, that have, financial means if necessary, but they definitely have the education, they have the experience, that they can at least give you some words of advice. And nobody's ever going to think that you don't know what you're doing. They're not going to think you're weak or that you shouldn't be in the space, because it takes a lot of courage to ask for help. And that's why you're not seen as weak. It's a courageous move just to ask for help. So
I think that's very well said.
Yeah, you're muted, but I saw you.
Yeah, I was actually on a phone call yesterday with a friend of mine, and this particular person is pretty well known in the space. And number one, thanked me for giving a spot on our summit stage a few years ago. And then just said, hey, can I get a copy of the review y'all did of our conversation? She was like, I thought that the questions that you asked were amazing, and the pauses and the way it was thought out. And all of a sudden she was complimenting me on like how well she thought I was doing. And of course, imposter syndrome like comes crashing in on me, because I'm like listening to this person that I admire and look up to talking about how she admires and looks up to me, and I was just like, this is so wow.
Right.
And
right.
This is someone that I've reached out to for help again and again and again, and it's not what you think it is. It really does make you strong, and you grow through it, and you get bigger. Like, I'm not talking about like bigger as far as like assets under management, but bigger in your capabilities and bigger in your mindset and in your views. And so it was, if I hadn't thought that it was the way to go before, after that conversation, I absolutely knew it was.
Yeah, I love that. And quite frankly, I think pretty much everybody has this little feeling if they get into some sort of social media presence, building an audience, all that kind of stuff. Like there's one side where you value your privacy, so you want to, keep things to yourself. And then there's the other side. It's like, well, why would somebody want to pay attention to me? Like, am I a person where, like people from high school and whatever, they're just constantly calling up. It's like, no, I gotta hang out with you. And it's like, if that's not the case, you'd feel it's like, yeah, well, who's going to want to watch my stuff? But like, really, there's just so much to all of this, and it's kind of weird, doing syndication with live streaming and podcasting and all that as a major part of your business. But I think it's pretty clear that it's something that it is our superpower, and that's why we're doing it for all it's worth. And that's why I also need to remind everybody that if you want more syndicator eyeballs, people in real estate checking out your stuff, this space could be yours. We're able to do this because other people believe in us and our ability to get more people in real estate looking at your stuff. And this episode is sponsored by Sponsor Cloud. So let's just stay with me for 1 minute. Here we go.
Hey guys, it's Angel, and we are super excited to announce our newest gold sponsors, Sponsor Cloud. If you're wondering what Sponsor Cloud is the one-stop shop for sponsors to automate, to delegate, to execute every aspect of their syndication projects, from affordable PPM generation to investor relationship management to fund administration and compliance, exclusive capital raising networking events. Plus, for the REI Rocks community, they're going to offer free migration and customer success services when switching from another provider. That's like a $2,000 value. So contact Sponsor Cloud, contact them today, and see how much time and money you can save. You can visit them at sponsorcloud.io/contact and make sure you let them know that you're part of the REI Rocks community, because these sponsors are the reason why we are able to continue offering affordable and low cost, no cost education, summits, information, knowledge, experiences, all of the things that we're able to find and bring to y'all. It happens because we have sponsors like Sponsor Cloud. So check them out, see how they can help you out. And Sponsor Cloud, thank you.
All right, sweet, good, and I'm not muted. So we got Frank Tran. What's up, Frank? And this is the REI Rocks review. I'm going to find that graphic that's on the screen and get rid of it. There we go. And yeah, there you go. Send lots and lots of positivity from Toronto. So there you go. And whenever I'm on the internet, I always say Toronto, even though people from Toronto don't say Toronto. What
do they say?
They say Toronto. The T in the middle turns into a D sound. Toronto.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Just like it's funny. It's a British throwback. Like sometimes our T's in the middles, they just turn into what linguists call a glottal stop. Like can't, I can't see it. I can't do it. And Tim Hortons would be a good example, but also mountain would be another one. So that's your linguistics for today, for all Torontonians in our audience. Fun stuff. But we're here at 11 a.m. Eastern every Friday. We're reviewing this different content from the summit. We watched at 1.5 times speed, so you can get more learning in a shorter period of time. And I really enjoy pre-recorded content more than live recordings or live streams right now, just because I can get all of it in way faster. But let's get going. This is on operations with Chander Mishra. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, it was, looking back on it, my heart starts beating really fast again. It was so rough.
It's the burning.
But don't be discouraged. You can do it.
You can do it. Yes.
So again, when you're choosing your team, I'll tell you this too. And one of the things that it was James, I always get his name wrong, Kendazami.
Mm-hmm.
He and I were talking, we were at a meetup, and I said, is it normal for your team to morph a lot? And he was like, well, that's why you join your team with an LLC, because divorces do in fact happen. And so that's not outrageous.
No, but what it is like, there's always, so you will start anytime, whenever you are starting out. So let's look at the business aspect of it. So a lot of people talk about, hey, starting out. In fact, just right before I got on this call, I got a call from an old friend of mine. He used to be my colleague at a different hospital, and he said he's a pain physician. He said, I want to get into apartment business. How do I do this? So, like Willie rightfully said, that your teams are going to change. But one important thing you have to remember is that lay down the rules of your team and be very clear about it, and be very clear in your communication, and also respect people. Don't make it personal, and respect boundaries. So if you respect each other in a business, irrespective of whether you work or not, this whole business is very small. You still would get ahead in your life. There's no reason to throw somebody under the bus or to do something which will hurt another person. You just kind of keep continuing at your pace, and you will always make new connections. You will always get new resources. You will always even shift completely, maybe go from multifamily to industrial to storage to assisted living, senior living, whatever floats for that particular asset class in that particular time. But having that relationship is the key, which will keep you going.
Yeah, I just want to pause it because you mentioned not throwing people under the bus, and like that's absolutely vital among your own team. But one thing that's been coming up more and more often, like especially with out in Houston, you had that one syndicator who had no boots on the ground, who just would not take a haircut, would not put the properties up for sale, and so they ended up getting foreclosed on and auctioned off. There are some times where you have to express really unfortunate realities. Yeah, you have to, and it feels like throwing somebody under a bus. It feels like you're being overly negative, but there are some situations where you need to protect people. What do you think, Angel?
So when you're speaking about these things, and you are speaking about them from a place where you want to keep other people from getting hurt, I think that's very different from using the opportunity to try and lift yourself up. And that is a very clear distinction. I think that when you're trying to talk about what somebody's done to try and show how much better you are, that is throwing somebody under the bus. When you're telling other people about your firsthand experience and you say, hey, look, this is what happened to me, you're educating them and trying to keep them from finding themselves in the same situation. Does it always work? No. I recently ran into a situation where I had told someone about a particular team and my own personal experience with it. And the next thing I hear is that they invested with this person anyway. And it's turning out to be pretty much the way it was when it happened to me. And so part of me is upset because I'm like, well, I told you. Why didn't you listen to me? Did you not believe me? And then another part of me is like what I said at a meetup the other day. I'm like, I guess sometimes you don't listen to the girl with the purple hair, t-shirts, and jeggings. I don't know what it takes to prove prove that to be proven as someone serious in the space, because I do have purple hair and I do wear t-shirts and jeggings. I outgrew my blue jeans. Sorry. Otherwise, I'd be in t-shirts and blue jeans.
Yeah, you're making some great points. It's so funny to when it comes to all these different things. I think part of it, and I think I had to go to my background without going on and on. My background was coming from tech and CRMs, and then I went from there on marketing teams, doing all the fulfillment, to actually taking more of a front seat in marketing itself. And so I think what's going on is, me personally, I have so much distrust when it comes to marketing. I think that there are so many people who just hype people up, and then just like as far as fulfillment goes, it's just non-existent. And it's utterly tragic because, people who are willing to work hard, they've got the discipline, they got the smarts, they want to make this work, and then they're being taken advantage of. It's pretty scary. And I think we're conditioned from, big TV to, see those different marketing pieces and go, it's like, oh, well, that means this is a safe investment. My money would be safe with those people, when it's actually the exact opposite. The people who are always flashing their cars, their big buildings, their boats and whatever, like that money had to come from somewhere. And the answer, 99 times out of 100 is from investors. And I think
Well,
it's
and I would also
pretty
say,
bad.
like, one of the things that we're seeing a lot right now, and that's not being publicized, is there are a lot of operating teams doing capital calls. People aren't talking about it. And that right there, I'm waiting for someone to say, well, I haven't done a cap call, because that's throwing them under the bus.
Hmm.
And that's like a virtue signal almost.
Yeah.
Now, when you're talking to your investors and you're saying, look, we're doing everything we can to make sure that we're covering this on our own, and we're building our reserves, and we're doing all the things that are necessary to make this property run successfully and not have to ask you to invest more of your hard-earned money, that's one thing. But I'm just waiting. I'm just watching to see who's going to start posting it on socials, because I don't know. It's one of those times when you're kind of like, ooh, what are you doing over
Hmm.
here? Because
Hmm. Hmm.
it's, I think about it too. It kind of goes back to those two schools of thought, I guess, where you're either linearly growing or you're doing, the Nike swoosh in your growth. You're growing exponentially because it's more relationship driven. And I think that that's going to be where some of that deviation comes from. People that are transaction to transaction, who knows what they're going to do. I know that as someone that really cares on the relationship side, I'm going to have those conversations in private if they even come up. They may not
Hmm.
come up. I had an investor text me the other day and ask me, hey, what's the plan? What's going on? Is this particular person's invested in both of the properties that we've had so far? And I said, well, I know it's unhappy that we had to pause distributions, but we also had to, we had to fix all the gas lines, and that was unexpected. And now we
Hmm.
have to build back some reserves, but it's not a forever pause. It's just until we get back into a good spot to be able to distributing again, or be able to
Hmm.
distribute. So those are conversations that you're going to be having with your investors one-on-one or in a small group. And if it comes up, that is an opportunity for you to say, look, there's a lot of people out there capital calling. And I know they don't really care because they're not in those deals, but
Hmm.
it gives you an opportunity to say, we are really working hard to not do that.
Hmm.
We're working really hard to have a successfully run property with strong asset management and strong guidance. And those are the times that you can really have those conversations and use some of the information that's out there without posting it in lots of places and trying to use it as a way to build yourself up or hop up the ladder higher.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And these are large investments that people put in. Like if you put in like I think maybe it's a personality thing. I'd like to think that there's more consistency among investors. But me, if I put in my 100K, and I would rather have paused distributions than you send me a distribution and then you do a capital call, quite possibly for more than's been distributed anyway. I just think it's just a matter of prudence and less, I want to say jerking around. I'll say jerking around.
I get it.
It's exactly. But this is the REI Rocks Review. We're here on Fridays at 11 a.m. Eastern. We review these different presentations, these master classes, these roundtables on commercial real estate. Sometimes it's about mindset. Sometimes it's about underwriting. Sometimes it's about raising capital for your deals. But this one here is about operations with Chander Mishra. Let's continue.
So I'm going to back up just a little bit here, because I understand the respect and the boundaries, but what kind of roles do you have in place when you're thinking of your team?
So the rules in place would be basically just being very clear about what other person is going to get, as a split, how you guys are going to split the fees. I think what people don't consider is, okay, what happens if you become sick or you don't play any role, or you say, hey, I have got 10,000 people following me, but you can't even raise like a $50,000 for a deal. Or you say, hey, I really don't even have any much money to contribute to a deal. So a lot of people are like coming in thinking, hey, I've got $200,000, $300,000 saved. And they go in and they do one LP deal. They want to become a GP in another one. And certainly there's no money. So I think the key to understand is that whoever is the main person is taking that big risk in everything, starting from EMD to lender to everything, and understand that role. And if you don't have any kind of mechanism to help, and like it very quickly happens, like people who are just doing underwriting or people who just doing peripheral stuff, they start getting into their mindset that, hey, they need to get a bigger part of their deal, not realizing that a deal has a lot more function than just underwriting. So I have seen a lot of underwriters who will come into a group saying that, hey, I underwrote the deal, and in not realizing that you can farm away underwriting for 80 to 120 bucks an hour. So it's just something you have to understand, that syndication is not just one day business. It's not. So you clarified.
I think that's a great time to mention that not all underwriting is created equal. It definitely isn't. And I'm just going to go shameless and ask, is there more room in your underwriting? Right. Jason is absolutely amazing at this. And we are working more and more on this. We're getting more and more satisfied clients who are getting coaching from Jason on underwriting. I just love his thoroughness. I love how he can just be so granular when he's making his projections, so that not just oh well, it should be this much in year one, this much in year two, and so on. But if you scan that code on your screen, or visit the URL at the bottom of the screen, then you can find out more of that. Do you want to say another thing or two about his underwriting?
I can. So one of the things he's doing right now, if you get in now while it's still early, is you get one-on-one. You get one-on-one coaching with him. So it is very specific to your needs, your speed of learning, your level of comprehension and confidence, and all of those things. I'll tell you, there's people that come in saying, I don't know what I'm doing. And Jason is really understanding. And I think back to his days as a TA over at Texas Tech when he was working the lab, and he would let people do it the wrong way if they didn't listen to his guidance at the beginning. And there were nights when he didn't get back from lab until like 9 or 10 p.m. And I'm like, what the heck? Why didn't you just help him? Why didn't you just tell him how to do it at the beginning? He's like, well, then they're not going to learn. So his goal is for you to learn how to underwrite. It's not for him to teach you a few tricks here or there, or to use this program or that program, or only use his. He wants you to learn how to underwrite. And I don't think there is any other coaching program out there when it comes to underwriting where the person that is teaching you is so just committed to helping you learn how to underwrite, so that when you click on a cell, you understand why that formula is there. You understand what's going on behind it, and you understand why the numbers are changing the way they're changing, so that if there is a mistake and you realize there's a mistake, you know where to go back to find out what is going on. Whether it was entered wrong or entered in the wrong cell, you're going to learn those things. It's not just going to be some piece of computer stuff where you just enter numbers in cells and it spits out a number. You're going to learn why it's doing those things.
Yep, great points. And I know that we were just talking about this. Yeah. I know we were just talking about this yesterday, where we're going like, well, I always hated the word underwriting because I don't think it gives you any information unless you're already in the business and you know the vocabulary and all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't think it tells you what's going on. And so that's what we've been playing with, calling it income and expense audit and projection. That's what you're doing, is you're auditing your income, you're auditing your expenses, and you're projecting into the future. That's underwriting. Of course, a big part of that is business common sense, which is just knowing it's like, well, wait a second, this is not a recurring bill. This is a one-off bill. So for tax reasons, we can't consider it to be this. We can't say that that's part of this other thing. And, so when we're turning around to the lenders or the investors, we got to be really clear about that. So it's fantastic stuff, but let's continue. This is the REI Rocks Review. We're here at 11 a.m. Friday, every Friday. Let's do it.
Every Friday.
Okay, this is what I'm going to get. And the other part is, somebody may have been kind to you on one deal. It doesn't mean they would be like doing the same thing on each deal for you. So different deals, different dynamics, because you don't know that what the other deal will going to bring, and what kind of like background stuff they would have to deal with to get that deal funded.
Yeah, no, and I think it's important to make that clarification too, that no one job is really more important than another job.
Yes.
And here, maybe even just in the past few weeks, I'm coming to notice and understand that what I didn't value before actually does carry value. Because I had a group that we're involved with that basically we walked away from. They didn't. I think that the way things went down were pretty wrong. It was over one of my children, so I'm biased anyway. But when I got out of the meeting, before I left, I said, that's fine, but when I leave, I take my connections with me.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, why would you do that? Oh, that's so mean. I'm like, no, you see, I worked 15 years for those connections, and I don't want something to happen where I get associated and it's a bad situation, because then it looks like I'm involved in that. and I'm no longer involved here. So my connections come with me.
And that comes up very quite often, very much so. Like, when people are working together, the investor list gets shared, and people will take it and make it their own. So make sure you have a very clear, it doesn't hurt to have an NDA signed, to not disclose any of those things and not to use your proprietary information. And people will pull all kind of stuff. We can't tell you how many times our list got stolen by somebody, and they just got a ready-made list and tried, pushing deals to them while we were still raising money. So you just have to be very careful and know and create those clear boundaries, because there's certain things we don't think about normally, because we don't think about our, like what you said, our connections, our worth in the market, our name and recognition. And when people come in and they just take it and they think they can use it, or they start calling those people directly.
Yeah, don't you remember? I'm a friend of Angel's. That was my fear. Is they were gonna call my connection and be like, "Don't you remember Angel called you so we could use this facility?" And then what if they go and use the facility and they damage something, or they break something, or they leave it unlocked? Then all of a sudden, I'm associated with that, and I wasn't associated with it at all.
Yes.
And so there was some hurt, and not necessarily for me. No, I'm me because I'm walking away, but because I wouldn't leave everything in place. But
I'm going to pause it right there because I want to share what we were privately messaging back and forth, because I just think it's such an important scenario to go through. So, well, the background, so take her away. Oh, but after you unmute. Can I unmute you?
They're all unmute. Sorry, my children. I'm the only one here now that Jason had to take Josephine to the doctor, and one of them bit the other one, so I had to handle that. Yay! Summer.
Yeah.
So one of the things we're talking about here in the chat, and that was one of the things we're talking about in the session too, was when you're divvying up those GP shares, you cannot directly compensate someone based on how much they bring into the deal. And I'm talking capital. So if somebody comes into the deal and says, "Hey, I'm going to bring $750,000. I'm going to bring $1 million. I'm going to bring 500,000," and you base their GP shares on that, and then they bring nothing, you can't reduce their shares. I've heard that there's some ways to maneuver around it when you get your legal team involved, but I have always heard that if you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, yeah, you may get your GP shares on this deal, but on the next deal, they're going to be a lot more shy about giving you what you say you can do. So that's kind of the first thing there. And then the next thing is, you don't always know when something's going to happen to the GP team. We talk about changes within the GP team and bringing on new GPs. Well, I've heard of a couple different situations. One from the person that was involved in it, another kind of secondarily. But there are times when people from the LP side may move on to the GP team. Now, that may be a forceful removal. It may be a voluntary move over. I've heard of both, but there are times when that happens, and you want to make sure you're in those LLCs locked in so that those kinds of transitions and moves can happen a little bit more smoothly. And again, I don't know all the ins and outs of those, but your legal team is going to know how to take that on. And you need to just understand that those things do happen. So if you're on a GP team, you're 2 years in and all of a sudden things need to change and you don't know what to do, you don't know who to reach out to. People have done it. It's not abnormal. It may not be the norm, but it's not abnormal either. And your legal team should know how to guide you through that, and just know that it happens and don't be embarrassed.
Yep, that's a great way of putting it. It's also a great time to do the old reminder. We're not your financial advisors. We're not financial advisors. We're not your attorney. We're not attorneys, all that kind of fun stuff. Yeah, that's really it. And actually, I had that come up in the last couple weeks. Is I had a syndicator say, like, "Oh, I always see that in the PPMs where, like you have these milestones on how much you raise, and then that's when you get awarded your GP." And I'm like, and I said, "Yeah, from what I've heard, that's 100% illegal." Which basically makes the contract void, as far as I know. And that person checked with their legal team, and they found out, sure enough, yes, that's not okay. So if you're thinking of raising capital, which of course you really ought to be, prepared to do asset management, prepared to have that actual real role in taking care of the property, because that's what the SEC demands. Otherwise, you need to open your own fund and invest that way, or be an LP and not get that credit. But it's a real issue.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if someone's asking you to help them out, and they're saying for every $500,000 you bring to the deal, we will give you XYZ amount of GP shares, run, because that is a deal that is just set up for an SEC involvement issue.
Right.
You cannot directly compensate someone based on what they bring to the deal. You just can't. It's an SEC thing. You just can't do it. And if you're on a team where they're doing that, I would suggest running. And if you don't want to tell anybody, great, that's your thing. You don't have to tell anybody, but don't work with that team again, because I realize a lot of people do that, but somebody's going to get caught. And then when that person gets caught, they're going to whistle blow on the next person, and the next person, and the next person. It's going to be like a bunch of dominoes. So just do it legally from the front, and do it up front legally from the first one that you've ever been in. And you won't know any other way to do it but the legal way.
Exactly. And I think right now all I'm thinking of is Joe Fairless. And when you first met him, how much did he have in assets under management?
I think it was about 60 million.
60 million. And now it's like 2.8 billion, somewhere around there, isn't it?
2.8-ish.
Yeah. Okay. Right. And so I remember, back, it may have been around the time of this recording here, that, somebody, who in very throw people under the bus fashion, we're saying it's like, oh, Joe Fairless is getting audited by the SEC. And that was years ago. And that's, from what I understand, is because everybody, once you get to give or take $500 million.
It triggers an auto review. At least that's what I've been told. We're not there, so I don't know yet. Right.
But if you realize that that's the case, you get to a certain size, you will be getting audited, then I don't think you really want to be getting cute with any of these rules. It's so easy. It's so easy to mess this up. And I know that some people, they'd go ahead and, publicly solicit, even though it was a 506B. And the reason why they had the cojones to do it is because they're like, I'm always going to be small time. The SEC's not going to, I'm never going to be on the SEC's radar. But, me, I'm on the internet. So it's like, if I'm not going for those kinds of numbers where you absolutely will get audited, then the whole project's just not worth spending years and years and years and years on. So I think it's hopefully that's interesting. Make sure you mention in the comments if you're watching this and going like, wow, I never thought of that, or anything, or you have any questions. Make sure you do that. We've only got a couple minutes before the doggy bag. I know we've been a little bit bad about commenting more than consuming, but let's get a few more minutes of Chander's presentation. Let's do this.
The more we get into, especially into multifamily syndication, we see how small the world is. The more I'm realizing, even though those were local connections, it didn't really matter, because the world is very small. They talk. And I don't need those things being said or spread or just out there in the universe and negativity. I don't need that. We got enough going on. So I guess then I'm going to kind of move into, you've gotten your property, or you've found a property you want. I'm going to kind of step into this, finding a good lender, or how do you create your list of lenders so that you're never in a position where you have one in case things go awry, so that you have options, not because we didn't have a good lender, that wasn't it at all. It's more, it was scary. It was very, I say scary, everything's scary. It was uncomfortable to not be able to be certain in our loan product. And so how do you operate to know with some level of certainty that you have loan product options?
So a lot of the time, the loan product options are generated primarily by different brokerage houses. And so you can go, I've seen a lot of people directly going with Fannie and Freddie, or somebody, like in between a dust lender, and going with them directly, thinking they're going to get a better rate or better, less fees and so on and so forth. But actually what happens is that you got to realize that lending is a process where a broker, you need to have a person who can have a great fiduciary responsibility of your deal. And when I say great fiduciary responsibility, who has the time to understand your deal, who has the time to present the deal appropriately to the lender. And that takes time. It's not like taking a pro forma and sending it out to the lender. It takes time. Sometimes you work for a week or two to kind of fine tune a pro forma and do all kinds of things. So most of the time you have to find people, especially when you're starting out, when you're underwriting and everything is kind of like, it's you have to find the right people who can present your deal in the right color. And if they can, so there's something about it here. And I know it's getting recorded and it's getting you guys are hearing this, but you do a different kind of underwriting for lender compared to you doing underwriting for your LP equity. So those two underwritings are very different underwritings. And the lender underwriting is more likely looking at the stabilized value 2 or 3 years down the road, looking at your rent bumps and everything else, while your underwriting for your LP capital is basically looking at how much cash flow you're getting, or are you getting a big yield at the tail end. And so just understand the basics of it. More and more you learn it. And what the lenders are looking at is how much discount rate you have right now versus how much stabilized value you have, and does that delta gets covered? And in between, are you able to make your debt payment? So that's kind of like a very different way of looking at a deal. The very short you do in most of the initial underwriting is look at the DSCR, which is kind of like a surrogate measure of the same thing what I'm talking about, but it becomes complicated when it comes to at lender level, because they might look at like exit coupon rate of 8% yield versus 7.5% yield. And only the brokers know who is looking at what. So the question was, and I wanted to give you this background before I answer the question. And the question was, how do you find that person? And that's basically you building that relationship and referrals. And a lot of the times, the person who's selling the property will say, hey, why don't you go with our broker? We got a great thing, great rate. They will quote you a rate. So rate is important, but rate is not the only thing. You have to look at the total cost of the loan. You have to look at how easy it is to deal with that group, how easy it is to reach out to your broker, so on and so forth. And have they changed their proceeds at the last moment, or is it bait and switch, call you in.
I'm such a tease. We're now at the time. It's if you want to get the rest of this presentation, it's funny the where I paused you. You look so angry at me. It's like, oh my goodness, you're. Oh. But there is a way. That's how you can get more access on.
Me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a sad face. It's like, how can you cut me off like that? But that's that. But the other thing I want to mention is how to connect with people like us, how to hang out with other syndicators. And that's, of course, Marvelous Mondays. Angel, you want to say a thing or two about that?
I absolutely can. So Marvelous Mondays has been going on for, I don't even know anymore. I think it started in January of 21. We've been at this thing for a while now. There's about 25 to 40 of us that regularly get together every Monday. The people have changed over time, but there's a few people that have always remained. And when people come in, like they come in, they stick around for a good period of time also. And we really become a family. We're an REI Rocks family. And every Monday we hang out together and we talk real estate, we talk family, we talk everything that's going on, because honestly, all of those things matter. Your ability to run your property is going to be based on your ability to fill your own cup. And so that was one of the things when Chander was talking about setting boundaries within your team and stuff. I started thinking about the post that we had yesterday about boundaries and why those are so important. And it's not being selfish. It's saying, no, I'm only working on this many hours, or I'm only putting this kind of, this level of importance on this because this fire isn't as important as this other fire or something like that. And those are the kinds of conversations that take place in Marvelous Mondays. You've got newbies to seasoned investors to seasoned syndicators, and it's just a great group of people, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a marvelous way to start your week every Monday. And I just want to share that with y'all.
Absolutely. And there's still time to get involved with our mastermind if you really want to level up. We have I'm struggling to call it, figure out what to call it. I think it's the summer session cohort. If you do scan this and fill in the application down there, there's still a few spots for this next cohort. And I think it's one of the best ways you can to move your business forward, because you are in a group of people who are already doing this stuff. And they're probably doing a part of this stuff that you're not, and you're not comfortable with. And if you can't be vulnerable with your circle and say when you've hit your limit of knowledge and expertise and get more information, then it's going to be really tough. So that's what that is. But this is the REI Rocks review. Angel, as far as the doggy bag goes, what are some takeaways? I see Christopher Nunez is appreciating this information, but what's a takeaway?
So I probably have a few. Probably the number one thing though is realizing that teams morph, and that's okay. Make sure you join with your LLC, and don't be afraid to reach out to people and ask for help, because there's tons of people out there more experienced than we are, more experienced than you are, that absolutely 100% want to help you and see you be successful. So don't be afraid to reach out for help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, we're here every Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern. We're on LinkedIn. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. It's a lot of overhead, I guess, but lots of excitement. We're here no matter what. Thank you very much for watching. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
All right. Thanks.